Today's guest is Tyler Reed, a fourth degree black belt, martial arts instructor, and owner of his own dojo in South Lake, Texas. For years, Tyler's been guiding people from kids to adults and everyone in between, helping them build not just discipline and strength, but confidence, focus, and resilience. In this episode, we're exploring the world of martial arts, what it really is, and how it transforms both the mind and body. Together, we'll answer three big questions. First, what are martial arts, and how do they differ across styles and philosophies? Second, how do they impact the mind and body in ways most people never expect? And third, can anyone do martial arts, or is it reserved for the naturally athletic? We'll also talk about how Tyler got started, what drew him into this path, and how he built a meaningful career in the fitness industry. One kick, one class, one student at a time. Let's jump in. You're a fourth degree black belt in Taekwondo.
Yes.
The very first question is, how does one even get to fourth degree black belts? How does that happen?
I think, one of the sayings that we always talk about both in my school and pretty much I'm sure every martial arts school that kind of floats around is, a black belt is a white belt who never quit, right? So it's just about, perseverance and dedication and kind of figuring out, where your heart lies when you start training. A lot of people get to black belt, but not very many get past black belt, right? So I think it's just a little bit of heart, I think, is probably what it boils down to.
Were you always kind of into martial arts growing up, or was that something that you picked up later on?
Funny enough, it was like I was kind of like the teenager that was like, like to watch UFC and kind of like was in that typical like male stage where like, fighting and that kind of thing was really like appealing, right? Um, but never got into it. I grew up in a small mountain town, and there was nothing of the sort where I grew up. So it was more of like a thing that was far-fetched that I always wanted to do, but never had the opportunity to do until later on in life.
So you were one of the OG like UFC fans. It wasn't like,
Yeah,
Conor McGregor came in and
oh yeah, man. Probably when I was probably watching pay-per-views with one of my best friends, Ryan, back in the day. Probably when I was eighth grade,
wow.
going early into high school, probably when I started. So years and years ago, years and years ago.
Okay. And so you got into it, and was it always Taekwondo, or like how was your journey kind of into the martial arts
It
world?
has not always been Taekwondo. It's where I started, and it is pretty much where I've always ended up through all my training. I did 2 years of Muay Thai back home in Georgia before I moved to here in Texas. I was actually in the workings of trying to find my first amateur Muay Thai fight back before I got a job offer here and ended up moving. So I was really excited for that. Still something that I feel like would have been really cool to do. I've done a little bit of jujitsu. I've done a little bit of Krav Maga. I've done some basics in judo. So I've touched kind of here and there on a little bit of everything. But Taekwondo is kind of where my heart and soul sits when it comes to my martial arts journey for sure.
Gotcha. And what, I guess, separates Taekwondo from a lot of the other martial arts? So you mentioned like Muay Thai, and to me that sounds like, they're both doing kicks, they're both doing punches. Like, what's different there?
I think there's a lot of like small nuances I think that kind of separate everything, right? So like the most common one would be like the difference between like karate and taekwondo maybe, right? Where taekwondo focuses mostly on like dynamic fast agile kicks, right? So we do a lot of lower body mechanics. The aesthetic of the kicks and the things that we do there are a little bit different than where you would see karate. Taekwondo is more of a sideways stance, where karate is more of a forward power stance where everything's a little bit lower bodied. Kicks are lower to the body because they're stronger that way, where opposed to like taekwondo, for example, like I said, a lot of jump kicks, tornado kicks, height was involved, things like that.
Wow. Which one is your favorite kick? Because I feel like like Joe Rogan has made like the sidekick famous. I feel like his sidekick is what
Yeah,
everyone talks
so
about.
his they he calls it his back kick, right, which is probably like the more generic term. In
Gotcha.
my version, my style of taekwondo, we call that a reverse side kick. But arguably one of my favorites as well. It's what I've done to earn my black belt through board breaks and stuff like that. But that one's a really good one, man. He's definitely made that one famous. We've definitely seen some knockouts with that kind of stuff. But yeah, man, that one's a good one.
I think when I was in seventh grade, it was seventh, eighth, and ninth grade, I think. I also did a little bit of Taekwondo. I only got up to, I think it was a blue belt.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Um, And yeah, it was a sidekick. And I remember like learning about all of like how to pivot and this and that.
Oh
And
yeah.
it felt like a basically like your body's a machine and you got to learn how to kind of use it and like
Yeah,
channel
yeah.
momentum properly.
Yep, 100%. I think that's probably where like, the martial part of the martial arts comes in, right? Martial being like the warlike aspect of it, the combat aspect of it, right? And learning to be able to use your body from top to bottom to be able to explode through your hips. So you have to be able to dig through, the ball of your foot, which only happens if you pivot, which only happens if you keep your shoulders up, right? So things like this.
Right.
So, that kind of aspect is one of the things that I really enjoy about it. Is one thing works really, really well, but only if every other thing works together in tandem with it, right? So it gives you a good idea of how to use your body. I think how to become dangerous, but how to control it. I think that's like one of the really appealing parts, right? The martial part is learning how to be dangerous. The art part is learning how to control yourself and doing that in a way that's more appropriate. So I think there's a lot that go into it like that. Sure.
Makes sense. Now, this might be, I'm going to ask a question and you might have a
Sure.
biased answer, but if someone's just trying to get into martial arts or fighting, I feel like a lot of advice is either do jujitsu or boxing. I feel like those are like the
Sure.
two big ones. Do you agree with that first of all? And where do you think Taekwondo lies in like somebody's journey into martial arts?
Yeah, I think that's the really cool part about martial arts and the fact that there's so many different kinds of martial arts is it's really what you're looking for. I know people say that, jujitsu is arguably the superior martial arts when it comes to like self-defense training and stuff like that. And depending on what you're looking for, I absolutely agree. But I also have the philosophy that, and I talk to my kids about this, right? Because Taekwondo is all upright and it's standing, right? If we want to use our kicks, we have to create distance. We have to manage the distance between me and the guy that's trying to hurt me a lot better than maybe some of these other styles of self-defense where boxing is more close range and jujitsu is all ground-based material, generally speaking, right? And one of the things I talk to my kids about all the time is one of the most dangerous places in the entire world is on the ground, right? Getting put on the ground, getting your head hit on the concrete, if you get thrown on the ground,
Yeah.
neck damage, spine damage, all these things go into being on the ground. So for a lot of people, police officers, things like this, bodyguards, bouncers, things like this, I think jujitsu is a fantastic place to start. Um, it was not for me. I think they probably deliver certain parts of self-defense better than Taekwondo might, but I think our school also delivers different styles of self-defense in a different way, right? Hand grabs, neck grabs, bully chokes, bully grabs, things that are more common at younger ages, maybe per se, and things like that. So I think really trying to figure out what martial arts really fits for you really has to start with what journey are you trying to be on, and then kind of figuring out what the people around you have to offer because for example, what my Taekwondo school offers is not the same as, a Taekwondo school that might be right down the road, right? We might teach Taekwondo, but what focus of Taekwondo is it, right? Or do you focus purely on kicks or do you focus a little bit more on the self-defense side? Things like that. So I think finding, what it is that you're shooting for is one of the most important parts, places to start when it comes to finding a martial art that fits for you.
Gotcha. So basically, I guess based on what your needs are, what your interests are, that'll kind
Yeah.
of guide which one you want
Yeah,
to
for
do.
sure. For sure.
Nice. And so, how does the process to go from a white belt all the way to a black belt and then pass? I think you just mentioned you basically had to break the boards, right? The wooden boards to see if you can qualify for the next. So how does that work?
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is everybody's qualifications for testing kind of bounces between what school you go to, things like that. The Taekwondo school that I'm a part of that I own, we're franchised through ATA, which is the largest unified martial arts organization in the entire world, right? We have over
Right.
500,000 members, and we kind of have a structure throughout all of what we do between school to school and throughout the organization as a whole, which is one of the reasons why I was drawn to being where I'm at now, was the structure of it. So, I think a general testing sense would be, some physical fitness, obviously, right? We want to have black belts that are physically fit that, you know, I shouldn't say deserve the rank of a title or of a rank because black belt's not reserved for necessarily the most athletic, right? But people who have perseverance and dedication to get through it, right? One of my favorite students, for example, was a 75-year-old war veteran who was a one-legged amputee, right? So
Whoa.
right, so he was amputated from knee down and had a metal leg, and you know Taekwondo on a metal leg is not really where you would probably think about starting yourself, and he did anyway. So, testing for us, it's a little bit of everything, right? A little bit of physical fitness. A big part of our testing would be more of the mental side, which is what my wife and I focus on in our school, right? I think martial arts will come and go. Learning how to punch and kick will always be there. Self defense will always be in the back of your mind. But I think creating people in the world who are better for it and make the world a better place is really where we sit. So a big part of our testing cycle is a lot of mental stuff. We do a lot of like, you got to dig deep down in the heart and really have to overcome some stuff that's uncomfortable. Being comfortable, being in the uncomfortable is probably a big part of most people's testings, and I think that's probably one of the bigger benefits that martial arts can give.
Gotcha. And would you say that's something that you're able to measure? Like, is the belt a measurement of mental toughness as well as a good chunk of, I'm guessing, physical muscle memory and that sort of stuff? Do you think there's like a direct correlation there?
Yeah, I think most of the time I would say that's a fair assessment. Now, I think that you could probably look in every sport and every aspect of most things and say, um, maybe that's not where it should be when I'm looking at this caliber of athlete, for example, or this caliber of belt rank, for example. But I think that's one of the joys of martial arts is everybody's journey is different, right? Just like your question before about, where do I start in regards to martial arts? Finding out where your heart lies and what your goals are. I think also go in tandem with how you might progress through the ranks and how long you might stay in each of those ranks, right? I've seen a lot of people who aren't necessarily the most athletic, but when it comes to perseverance and digging deep and really like overcoming some hardcore obstacles, right? I think that is award worthy, whether that is a belt rank, whether that's a midterm testing, whether that's just purely earning the first degree black belt, right? Because if we withhold those ranks for people that might be the top tier, right? People like one of my favorite students I just mentioned, right, who had an amputated leg. I think we could probably agree at 75 years old and one leg, you're not going to be the most athletic person in the room. But should that stop you and prevent you from earning something through perseverance, hard work, and dedication? I would say absolutely not, right? I think that's a big reward in that regard.
Wow, yeah, that's such an interesting story with the amputee veteran. How does that even work in terms of like practicing the different moves and like how does that look like on like a day-to-day basis in training?
I think it goes hand in hand. I think, working with him and other people with different disabilities, both physical and mental, right? I think finding not only a way to deliver the information that's appropriate to the issue at hand or, the injury at hand or whatever the case may be, um, but them being able to perform it, you being able to teach it, but more importantly, me as an instructor and the one who's guiding, finding a way that's not only comfortable for them to work it, but in a way that creates confidence through their problematic areas, right? Whether that's, like I said, a physical disability, a mental disability, any kind of impairment that might come their way. I think this is where martial arts shines, right? 75 years old, one-legged amputee. You're not joining like a summer league baseball team, right? You're probably not going on the volleyball court, things like that,
Yeah.
right? So where can you find an opportunity where you can grow on, your own thing, but with a group of people with a like mind, with a like mindset, that all have the same goal as you. And I think that's where martial arts truly shines.
Gotcha. And okay, so you obviously have a lot of experience in martial arts, teaching different people. How long have you been an instructor of martial arts? And was that something that you always thought that you would be able to do?
No, man. I think so. I've been doing Taekwondo now for 12 years. I was a student for the first two of them. I started when I was 20 years old, so I was an adult student. So I'm proud to say that I was the one who felt like, well, I'm past that prime, I'm past that age. That's a thing for kids. There's no way that I do this thing at a successful level, right? So I'm really proud to say that I am, which is why I always vouch for our adult program so highly. Um, but it, I think. The first 2 years as being a student was big, right? Because you learn how being a student affects later on how you then become an instructor. And I think me being an instructor was definitely never something that I thought I would do. I don't ever think martial arts was something that I thought I would do at my age. And I definitely thought I would never work with kids. Man, I never thought I would work with kids. And I think that's the biggest thing is I was a full-time bartender. I led the bar at the situation that I worked in. I was the lead there. Was really comfortable where I was at. Took a big pay cut, worked extra hours, did all kinds of things to start teaching because I found out that it was um, from someone who, I guess the way to think about it would be, I overcame a lot when I was young, so being able to see and give the opportunity to others was really big for me, right? So when I first started working with kids and like kind of saw them like overcome some stuff and like see that light bulb click and then like get their next rank and be like, man, I never thought I would be here. I think that's really, really, really good. And I think it takes a certain type of person to work with kids, which I never thought it would be me. But I would say that most of my parents, my biggest program at the school, my most popular program at my school right now is the 4 to 6 year olds who I really excel with. So it's definitely something that's come really natural. I think it's a God-given gift that was hidden from me for a long time, and I never thought I would find it. But here we are.
I bet that also gives you a lot of hope, right? Because if you're a kid and you're 4 to 6 years old, you're basically learning something new every time you step
Hmm.
into
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
studio, right?
for
And so
sure.
you're just constantly seeing this learning and relearning and new learnings process. So, and
Yeah.
how's that? Like, how does your teaching style differ from somebody that is 4 to 6 years old versus somebody that is 60, 70, 80? And like, do you see any like specific like stark differences where you're like, okay, this is how I should approach this group of people, and this is how I should approach this older crowd?
It's funny that you say that because no, not
Oh
really.
wow,
Yeah, so it's like one of the things that I've
we're
been
all
working
just
on with
kids.
my yeah, dude, and I think a lot of my students, especially my teenage and adult class, because my teenage and adults they train together. So if you're an adult white belt, you're training with my assistant instructors who are 20-year-old third degree black belts, right? And I put them all together because I think that's an environment that's really uncomfortable for adults, but it's really once you get comfortable, it's a place that you can truly thrive. When I was a student, I was 20 years old. My school didn't have an adult program, so I trained with 13, 12, 13, 11, 10 year olds, right? Which was really, really humbling. But I think in that sense, man, it's I've been teaching them. You teach a 4 to 6 year old a certain way, but the way that that differs as you go through the program, funny enough, doesn't change much. And I really started to see that when I started to really work with adults more frequently and less with teenagers, because teenagers are kind of like some of them have like the too cool for school attitude, right? So they kind of low
Yeah,
key learn it on their own speed, where adults are very much like, I want to do it right. I want to do it right the right way the first time, right? So breaking down the small details for them is almost the same interaction as breaking down um, big details for the little kids, right? How I break
gotcha.
down a pivot and how I word how to pivot in my 4 to 6 year old class almost varies none in my adult class. Um,
Wow.
and I teach almost exactly the same way, the same type of energy, the same playfulness, those types of things. And I think those going hand in hand is a funny thing that I never thought would happen, but happens really, really frequently.
Gotcha. Okay, so it seems like you got your training experience before you started your own studio, or how did that work out?
Yeah, so my story is kind of funny. When I was 20, I was dating a young lady who was older than me by a couple of years, and she actually had a 4-year-old son. So I used to take him to class. And
Yeah, he's with you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I didn't take class at the time.
Oh, okay.
I was the parent who
Gotcha.
sat in the back, and I used to just like toy on my phone, and like
Right.
he would take class, and I would come thinking like, man, if I was his age, I would have loved like if this was me, right?
Yeah.
And eventually his instructor, who ended up being my first boss and my instructor, came to me one day and was like, hey, you're already here. Why don't you just come and take a class? It's free. It's on me. Just come and take a class, see how you like it. My response is probably like most, I'm too old for that. I work schedule. It's not for me, blah, blah, blah. Right. I ended up doing it anyway. Ended up loving it. Um, took
Just
class for
after
a little
that
while. Yeah,
first ever
man. Yeah.
class. Wow.
I think for adults, I think for a lot of people, whether you know it or not, or whether you voice it or not, I think a lot of people want to be a part of something bigger.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know what that looks like for them, where to find it, and even if they do find it by happenstance, they don't realize that they're a part of it. Whether it's too late or it's like, oh, what I'm already here, right? Um, so the structure of the way that the ATA has their school run, generically speaking, the structure of Taekwondo, the structure of martial arts, um, for a kid who had kind of crazy structure, it was really it came to my heart. It kind of spoke to me even at 20 years old. And then to see and work and get cheered on by 12-year-olds and like, and eventually our school had an adult program. Some of the instructors started to train with me and stuff like that.
Nice.
All of which who were younger than me. Um, so it really provides itself in a really good area. So it's just kind of one of those things. So we ended up not dating anymore, and I told her and I said, "Hey, listen, like this is my thing, right? Like this is my thing now. Like I love this thing and I don't want this thing to be removed from my life. So like if you guys want to stay, you can stay. If not, I understand that, but I will not be leaving." So she ended up deciding that it was better that if they just created that space. So I ended up staying. My boss or my instructor at the time said, "Hey, if you want to work for me twice a week, you can train for free." So I ended up
Nice.
assisting, like, I would get done at work at 5. I'd come and teach from like 6 to 8:30 and help him teach the floor. And then from there, became full time, got
Yeah.
promoted, ran a school, a failing school that ended up running. And then that's where I met my wife. She was my program director. So she ended up being the one who did all the enrollments and things like that. And then COVID hit. And then the rest is history, man.
Wow. So how'd you guys even survive through COVID? I feel like that's such a because you're doing physical contact and you're like, did they even
We were
allow you
all,
to?
man, no, man. Her and I were in the school. We had to teach through Zoom.
Oh
Uh,
wow, that must have
yeah,
been
man.
interesting.
That was
Taekwondo on Zoom.
it was a time of our life, that's for sure. It was not easy. It was definitely a challenging thing that we had to do, and I'm sure a lot of people, at the time we were part of a company in Atlanta who has, multiple schools. So I think we were lucky to be a part of an organization and a company that kept their doors open, that, had the income or the ability during COVID to be able to do those types of things. So we were lucky that we were able to continue, and I learned a lot teaching through Zoom, how to verbally do everything and not have the opportunity to like come by and physically like fix this and touch that and make sure that these things are right. So how to word things and how to do things came a lot more naturally after Zoom, funny enough.
That's actually a very good point. I didn't even think about it. Like just
Yeah.
forcing you to like speak and teach only through your words probably made you a better speaker and
Yeah.
instructor in that
Yeah, and
sense.
cameras are recorded in reverse, right? So everything that we taught was right-handed, but if I used my right hand, it would show up on left hand on the camera. So I actually had to do all of my teaching for about a year and a half left-handed, which I don't do. So, I got a lot of skill-based material for myself during COVID too. So my left hand became pretty naturally good at certain things that it wasn't beforehand. So a lot of funny things happened through COVID, man.
Very cool. And so when COVID hit, were you still like a bartender or had you like already quit that job and gone full into being an instructor?
No, man, I worked 7 days a week, 2 jobs for 10 years.
Wow,
So from
7 days.
18 years from 18 years old, up until I was 28, which is when COVID hit, I worked basically at the Taekwondo school and a full time at bartending and or the vice versa reaction. At some point, I ended up going full time at the school, which was Monday through Saturday, and then I bartended Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. So I was up until COVID, and then when everything opened back up, they called and was like, "Hey, you want to come back?" And I was like, "No, man, I'm deep into about running my own school, and I'm getting married and things like that." So I ended up stepping out in a way right after COVID.
Coming to like opening your own place and or a franchise of what'd you call it? ATA was it? Or
ATA, American Taekwondo Association. Yeah.
gotcha. So how does that even feel like that's a huge commitment? Not just like financially, but also your time and now you've kind of like, dedicated yourself for the next few years for it. I'm sure you already basically loved doing what you were doing, but like how did that decision come about?
Yeah, so we did ours in I was about to phrase it as the untraditional route, but I would say that the way that I did it in the way that most I would say a majority of other people do it. They kind of go hand in hand. You do one or the other, and they're both super common. And the reason I say that is we didn't open our school from scratch. We actually bought it from our previous employer. So when we were running our school in Georgia. Right after we got married, my wife is very well known throughout the company. She's worked in schools in Texas and Florida, some of the bigger companies in Georgia. She's been offered jobs from people across the nation just because she's inherently really talented at what she does. Both, she's a higher rank than me, funny enough, on the floor, and the way that she manages and runs schools is top notch, top tier. So when we got married, she's from Texas. She moved to Georgia, where I was from. So after we got married, we got a job offer from someone who had already previously offered her a job and was like, "Hey, having a husband and wife combo now that you're married, like this would be phenomenal for the school. We would love to have you guys." And at the time, the answer was like, "No, like we're not ready to own a school. Like we want to open our own school. Our dream goal was to open our own school up in Colorado. We're a big fan of the mountains. We like the snow. We like the cold. We love it there, right?" So we're like, no, it's not for us. We're not doing it, right? We're just going to be here. We're managing the school. It's super successful. It's okay. He said, well, I'll fly you out and, have you out for the weekend. Tyler can teach a couple of classes on Saturday and, we can kind of go from there. We're like, okay, if you want to fly us out, we'll take a couple days off from work, whatever. Not a big
Yeah,
deal.
free vacation.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's whatever, if that's what you wanna do. So he put us up in a hotel. It was really nice. School's really nice. It was biggest school I'd ever been in, blah, blah, blah. Went back home, called again, was like, "So, what do you guys think?" And they're like, "Well, we can't do it. Like, moving from Texas to Georgia is just not feasible financially. All these things are in play, whatever." And he said, "Well, I'll take care of all of these things that you guys are worried about. If you guys take care of the things that you're worried about on your end, I'll take care of my end, and I'll move you guys down here if it works that way."
Wow.
I had lived in the same place in Georgia my whole life. My wife has moved around in multiple cities. And so basically, it was an opportunity to basically manage something from the ground up that wasn't run by an organization or like a company as a whole. I was pretty much going to be at the top. I was getting able to move away from home, experience a new walk of life, a new atmosphere in regards to how I taught, those sorts of things. So we were like, well, if that's what you want to do, then I think we can do that. So now we're super close to her family, and now we have this opportunity. So we worked for him for about a year, and after about a year, something in their family went down where they had to take a step away, and it was either we bought the school or they just sold it. And if they sold it, it was probably going to, close down and be turned into something else in the strip mall. Who knows what it was going to be? And we weren't ready. But we're a firm believer that God puts things in front of you that He believes that you're ready for, and so it was let it close or
So within
take it on. So
that's interesting. So within 1 year of you guys moving, you got an offer to basically buy out the entire school or that specific
yep,
franchise of the school. That is
yep.
amazing. That is
So we've been school owners
amazing.
for the last 2 years. We're going like two and a half ish now. We've been owners of the building, so it's been a journey, man. Being a school owner
Wow.
is business owner is not easy, but it's rewarding, man. It's been great.
That's interesting. I wanted to switch gears a little bit and
Sure.
talk a little and focus a little bit on the athletic side of it. So I know that you go to the gym multiple times a week. You stay fit outside of just the training. How does that relate to fighting, martial arts? Is that required, or would you say that's just like a very good complement skill or complement hobby to have with it?
I would say it's definitely a compliment. Some of the absolute most phenomenal martial artists that I've both competed with on the world stage, um, and against in our regional tournaments on a pretty consistent basis. I mean, I've been competing for the last, I mean, 10 years probably, maybe 11 out of my 12 years. I started competing really early on. It's one of the things that kept me involved was competition. I'm super competitive, and I like to be able to work towards something that I can then outwardly express with others and against others. Um, and I'll tell you, I used to lift more than I do now before I started Taekwondo, and I actually had to take a step back because I was too sore all the time. My hamstrings were too sore all the time. I couldn't kick, I couldn't stretch. So there were certain aspects of my training that were suffering because I was overly lifting. And even to this day, it still happens, right? If I have a super heavy and aggressive leg day, it makes my next training sessions, my next couple of training sessions on the mat really, really difficult. So I have to like, kind of, there's an ebb and flow to it. But again, some of the best people I've competed against that have won multiple world championships over me and against me in different divisions, they don't lift at all. I think staying healthy and lean is always going to be something that is highly advantageous, given any sport, even in life, right? So I think that's definitely going to be something that complements it highly. Um, but even all the kids in my school, like the joke in the school is the kids will come in and they'll ask me and my two assistant instructors who are 20-year-old males, did you guys go to the gym today? Because they know that it is high on my priority list. It's something that I preach to them all the time about being healthy and strong and in appropriate ways and when you should start lifting and things like that, because I think they go hand in hand if you want them to, but they most definitely don't have to. Um,
Gotcha.
and I think it's one of the things that it's just a habit of being healthy that it helps you create, right? If you're here training and sweating and like kicking and for an hour straight, and then I, in my hopes to motivate the kids to eventually want to lift, and in hopes to push my adults to continue to be healthy in different aspects of their life, whether that's, you know, sparring was really hard today because I'm having trouble breathing through my stuff. You're right. Like I'm gonna go walk some more. I'm gonna jog a little bit extra, or I can't touch my toes when I stretch, and that makes me feel some kind of way. Right. I think all of those things can be things that can kind of flow together if you want them to. But again, they don't necessarily have to. Um, but like we talked about earlier, I think having a healthy black belt is a lot like having a healthy police officer, right? What you can give to the world seems a lot more appropriate than if it's in the inverse reaction.
Right. That makes sense. And so you said basically in the higher kind of stages of the Taekwondo journey, it all comes down to just technique and mentality and being able to find kind of those opportunities. I guess, is there like tournaments that you guys have to do in order to like keep your belt or kind of rank higher? How does that work?
So we have a competition scene. So we have a closed circuit, which means only people who are a part of ATA can attend. So there's open circuit competition. There's closed. We're closed. Um, but you don't have to compete. Excuse me. I encourage all of my students to compete at least twice before they earn their black belt,
At
because
least twice, not once.
twice, not once. Because how many times have you tried something one time and said, it's really not for me, and then gone
That's
back and
fair.
did it again, whether it was food or an activity or something of the sort, a TV show or movie, even, right? I think dipping your toe in at one time can be easily done as a one and done. I did it. I scratched it off
Yeah.
my list, right? Where I think going once, maybe you kind of might have had a good time. I don't really quite know yet, right? So I'm going to push you to go again, and then maybe you win first place, and you're like, "Yo, this is for me," right? I like the way this
Yeah.
makes me feel. Um, and if you compete when you're a low rank, right, your competition is short. It's pretty minute in regards to what you're able to do because you don't know much yet. Where for me as a black belt and where I'm at, I have all kinds of different events. My ring takes almost 2 hours to complete because there's so many things to do, things like that. Um, so you don't have to do it in any aspect of our company or organization to rank up. Um, but Taekwondo is it's an Olympic sport, right? How often do you go to soccer practice, love soccer practice, and hate going to the soccer game, right?
That makes
Why do you go
sense.
to soccer practice, right? To
Yeah.
get good at the game, right?
Right.
Taekwondo has a game involved. Most people don't see it that way, right? Jiu-jitsu tournaments, I think I'm sure there's karate tournaments, things like that, but those are all the game, right? So like, do you have to go and do it? No. Should you, and will I motivate or encourage you to? 100%, because that's where you really you get in a spot that's uncomfortable, right? you're the only one in the ring. Everyone's watching you do your thing, right? And that can be nerve-wracking. And I think that's a part of life, right? You know, being able to stand in front of somebody during a job interview, to give a presentation in college, right? To ask a girl out on a date, to ask a girl to marry you, right? These are all moments that are really scary and hard, and things that you have to do on your own, right? So I think competition really provides a lot of things like that that people don't realize, and things that as a 20-year-old helped me, right? And I feel like if it helped me, it'll help a 4-year-old, it'll help a 10-year-old, it'll help a 75-year-old, right? So
Yeah, one of the reasons why my parents had me sign up for a Taekwondo school back in the day was for like mental discipline. Because I feel like I was one of the that first generation where it's like you got phones now, you got
yeah,
internet,
man.
your attention is never there, and then all of a sudden you have to put your phone away for an hour every day after school, and you have to basically listen and like basically do art, but with your body, right?
Yep, 100%.
And you don't have to be and you have to not be scared of like putting your body through some sort of resistance in terms of like taekwondo. I remember that we had these like bags, and just like kicking for the first time felt so weird, but
Oh,
after you got
100%.
used to kind of like, okay, when I hit it, it's gonna move,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
if I
yeah.
hit it better with a better form, it's gonna move even further, and maybe I can even knock it down. And that was kind of like
Right. Yeah, yeah,
what we
yeah.
always wanted to go after.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, is everything is step by step, right? And I think that's a great it's a great way to learn how to live your life, is creating little stepping stones that, you know, man, that kick was really awkward for me because of this reason. So when I fix it, it makes me feel good. Now my kick is better, which makes me feel good. Now I can knock the bag over, which makes me feel good, right? And all that all started with that one tiny step of, oh, I have to figure out that's an issue that I have, or that's a thing that makes me uncomfortable first. Then we have to figure out how to get over it. And right, and those stepping stones are kind of the way that I help teach my kids. The last couple years, I've told my wife, and like once we kind of took over the school and we bought it and we were able to kind of make it our own, I've tried my very best to almost teach taekwondo in the most minimal sense, because I would argue, like I said earlier, that taekwondo will come and go. You learning how to punch and kick will probably escape you at some point. But being able to do like what you just stated and create these goals for yourself when you get to college, and these stepping stones, and the confidence to speak loud and stand tall with your chin up, I think those aspects of martial arts are far more important. And so our school, we talk heavily about life skills and character development, because those are the two things that I think um, provide the most. I think they're the things that God wants me to provide to others, and martial arts and taekwondo is the medium in which to do it. So I think if people think about martial arts less of a activity of punching and kicking and belts necessarily, and more of an opportunity to create better people, I think this is where the elevation really starts to happen.
We just shot an episode with a strength training coach, and it's
Sure,
crazy the similarities because
sure,
he said almost the exact thing in terms of like what it does to your mental toughness, like strength training
100%.
does. And I can see how like most things that are fitness related, where they require some level of activity and some level of progression, what he was saying is like progressing through, if you're not able to pick up something and you're like 60, 70 years old, over time you can start learning how to do like, lunges, and then from lunges you go
Yeah,
into squats, and then once you have like box squats down, you can start adding the barbell, and then you go from there. And there's like a very similar pathway where it's like as long as there's progression, and the user of that martial arts or strength training, the more they practice and the more they feel like they're progressing, the more they can apply that to their external lives. And
100%.
yeah. And so
100%.
I wanted to now get into a little bit more of the business stuff. And
Sure.
first of all, how much thought did you put into when you first got into the school, about, oh my God, I'm going to be a business owner versus like, oh, I'm going to get to teach? Because I feel like those are two very different skills.
Yeah, they most definitely are, and that's why I think, God blessed me with, who my wife is. He knew that I needed someone like her, because, I I don't know if it's inherently a guy thing, which you probably would argue it is, but being able to keep everything tight knit and organized and things like that, being able to stay on track and on schedule, stuff like that, she's really just the master of. Um, and there's still things that like I did something the other day, and on the business side of paperwork, that she's training one of our new employees, and she's like, I know that Tyler did this because none of it is filled out right, and he's been doing this for years, right? So it's like one of those things where, um, for me, one of the things I learned really early on in my career, um, was, and I would say I learned it about martial arts, but again, this is why I love martial arts is you could literally replace the phrase martial arts with any other phrasing that you want, whether you're a business owner, you're a parent, a mother, father, any of it. Um, but what we who I am as a person and how I deliver my information is the product that we sell. Right? So like I said, Taekwondo is the medium in which I sell the product, right? My product being life skill and development, my product being God wanted me to make better people in the world. But I think that is the product. So for me, my biggest thing to have a successful business here is how I present and deliver what's important out there. So my wife's job is as easy as it can be, which is this is what I want for my family. Where do I sign up? Right? Where do I slide my card? Because this is what my child needs because of his physical disability, because of his mental disability, because of his trouble at school, or just because simply it's good for him, right? Whatever the outcome of the product that I deliver is, to me, that's the most important mindset behind it, right? Because I think if you're true to that and you're true to your goal and your mission statement, I think the business should flow behind it. In our first year, we were so focused on like paper business and like money business that I started to slack on my business.
The
And
product.
yeah, exactly. So when we kind of, hit that switch and was like, hey, I really need you to like, she told me like, hey, you're overdoing it on all aspects. Like you're burning the candle from both ends. Like I need you to reset yourself and like light only one end of your candle and it needs to be out there. Um, I think that was the thing that was like, yeah, this is the way our business is supposed to run, right? And I hope that people can find that like when they have their business to have someone behind them like my wife is for me that's like, yo, I got this, but like you got to get that, right? Because and she'll pull me and we'll mingle. She's a fantastic instructor. She teaches a couple classes a week and she's phenomenal at it. She's far better at doing both sides of her job and my job than I am of my job and her job, right? So I try not to touch it much. But I think that is understanding like what your product truly is. And sometimes that's the people, not the thing that you give. I think this is an important part of business.
Gotcha. And I agree with you. I think that it is just a guy thing that we're just disorganized,
Yeah,
except for
yeah.
like the one little
Yeah,
tunnel
I can get
vision.
one thing, yeah. You
Yeah.
tell me anything on the floor, I'll nail it, but if you tell
Yep.
me to remember to do something or, like, has to be done the way, man, I'm gonna mess it up. I'm gonna mess it up.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds about right. I think I can relate. But and what about in terms of like growth of the business? So I guess when you first moved to Dallas and opened up your own studio, you already had a clientele, right? Because the
Right.
person that sold it to you already had built that up. So how did you take that and either grow it or try to not, well, most importantly, try to not lose it all and go to zero, right?
Yeah, it's really tough because, we just talked about it, right? Your product is who you are as a person, and the people who ran the school before us, they weren't me. So even when I worked under them, there were certain things that like I appreciated and I learned from, and there were certain things that I learned from in the sense of like that's not the way I would do it because that's not true to who I am, or that's not how I would want to deliver it, or that's not the focus that I would truly want for my students. But it didn't really matter because I wasn't in charge and I respected that and I do respect that. But I think when you take over, 200 students from someone else who has a vision that might be slightly different than yours, you have to be really careful on the changes that you choose to make for people. And that was a big thing that my wife and I had to touch base on was like, we might not agree with this, or we might want to deliver this in a different way and this in a different way. But we can't choose to do all of that at one time, right? We need to kind of, show the people who we are and that we do care genuinely. And like, we're not just here for the money and, X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, it is our business now and we need to stay true to ourselves. So I think with that, there was definitely people um, who left because the vision that they were in love with wasn't our vision, and that would never upset me, and it never has upsetted my wife, because it is, you guys are the consumers and we want what's best for you and your family, and I want to deliver what's best, and that might not always align in the same way. So I think business wise, making changes is probably one of those things that people are like, oh, now it's my chance to do this thing, right? Or to do all of these things my way. Um, and you have to remember that, you are providing outwardly to people, right? So some of those things might seem a little bit selfish if you broke them down and was like, yo, if I hit all of these things right now, it might make me feel happy. But what about the people that, you're supposed to be providing the product for? So for us, it was taking a step back and like slowly, showing everybody who we were and who we wanted to be for them. And then slowly started to implement, rules and regulations and in certain aspects of our training that might matter now more to our mission than they did prior to.
And so, what about like online marketing versus kind of the help that ATA has provided? Like, what have been the avenues where you've been trying to kind of grow your brand in the Dallas, Texas area? Has it just been word of mouth? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's tough because I think like 90% of martial arts schools, growth is completely dependent on word of mouth, right? So it's really hard to market a martial arts school in the sense that we are not an essential business, right? We are not like tutoring. Um, we're not even on the same level in most families' eyes in regards to like sporting, right? Most people would
yeah,
say that
depends on who
like
you ask. Yeah.
100%, right? And around here, it's very team sport oriented. Texas is very baseball and football oriented, right? So when they think about things that their kids have to do, it's usually those couple of sports mixed with like some sort of musical instrument, right? So they can have that aspect in their life. And then it's like we fall in the extracurricular activity side of things, not the necessity side of things. So having people that love us enough to say, hey, you're looking for an activity for your kid, don't do soccer. This is what you need for your family, that type of thing. So we do like Facebook marketing and we do like Instagram marketing, we do Google and we do all the typical things. Um, but what that yields in response to what my families bring when they share it with their friends when their kid gets diagnosed with ADHD and they're like, I'm lost, what do I do?" Right? So for us, having a good product that we can deliver to our families that makes them say, I'm so happy I'm here. That's really, really important because the second that they hear someone else, that's when they step in for us, right? I've seen this on Facebook, even, right? When we're a part of like the local community group and people are like, hey, I have this issue, this problem, I'm looking for this thing. Sometimes I get tagged and our school gets tagged by moms that are recommending us to other moms because they know it's going to help their issue. And not only I think is that the best way to get new students, but I think it's the most genuine way. And I think when you're a mom concerned and there's another mom who you don't know that says, hey, I have been through that, I promise you this is for you. I think that's what builds a community that you take the community from out there and you're able to put it with inside your school. And that's how we grow. So for me, um, if I can provide the very best product out there in in the highest hopes that our families leave genuine reviews and our families give genuine word of mouth when they leave the door. So I think that's the biggest thing I tell my parents all the time. Posting a photo and simply tagging the school, checking in when you walk through the door to just tell your friends that, hey, this is where I'm spending my afternoon. Those things go a long way in the atmosphere and the climate that we're in right now in regards to social media. So I'm always telling them, hey man, like even if you're not like screaming our name at the rooftops, like those little things go a long, long, long way.
Yeah, and I bet it's more first rewarding, I guess, right, to get somebody via word
100%.
of mouth compared to just like, somebody clicked your ad and found you that way.
100%. Yeah,
And it
100%.
probably also gives you more fuel. Like it tells you when
Yeah.
you're doing things right and you can
Yes,
double down.
absolutely. Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely.
I just wanted to ask you a little bit about kind of hiring a team or building a team around your mission or your products. In your case, it would be like different instructors or people to help with the managerial stuff. So how do you go about knowing who to let into your community and be part of your team? What do you look for? Is character important over skills? Is that something you can teach, or they kind of have to come in with the right attitude, and that's the most important thing?
I think one of the things, so like my wife, she does all the onboarding, right? So she does the interview process. We interview all of our teenagers before they come on. I think most staffing that comes from a martial arts school comes from within, right? So we're trying to build up, the two teenagers, they're 20, so they're not teenagers anymore. They've just been with me for so long. But that's what we want, right? They were young kids that, grow a passion for either teaching or doing the martial arts as a whole, or being in an environment where they feel like they can grow and they like others to see other people grow, whatever it is, right? So one of the only part of the interview process that I do and I participate in is I tell them that if you accept the job, you don't have to be the best martial artist, you don't have to be the best instructor, because those two things can grow, but you do have to believe in what we're trying to do, because if you don't believe in what we're trying to do, then you're not going to do what you need to do, right? So understanding that character development and the discipline, and that kid who spends all 30 minutes in class, you have to be comfortable telling that kid to stop spinning, 400 times, because that's why mom pays us to do it, right? So understanding, so that's my spiel, is like, this is our mission statement, right? And um, I can't teach you to love the mission statement if it's not something you agree with, right? So my thing is, you represent our school both inside the school when you're working and outside the school, right? Your character on who you are outside the school speaks a lot, right? If you go and do something stupid and get arrested because you were being a knucklehead, right? That directly reflect, "Well, how can my kid teach from that guy?" Right? So like,
Yeah.
who you are, unfortunately, matters both inside and out, and that's a responsibility that you guys have to accept, right? And so they have to look me in the eyes and say, "Hey, I'm going to be a part of the school, both inside the school during work hours and outside the school, when I'm not here." Because it's not like, if you work at Walmart or you work at McDonald's and you get in trouble for something stupid, no one's going to care. No one's going to know. You know what I mean? But if we're teaching discipline, honesty, respect, and we get in trouble for, disobeying all of those things or any one of those things, um, it breaks the mission statement as a whole that we're trying to give. And how can we give that if we can't do that, right?
Right.
So I think creating an atmosphere inside that's like, this is all that we're about, and there is no leeway on it, whether it's us when we're teaching or the students when they're learning.
Okay.
But I've gotten onto parents before. I that we are here for this thing, and like, your kids need it, the other kids need it, and you have to be on board too. So it's this thing that, like, hey, like, tell sometimes parents, kids, my employees, we're all on the same page, and if we can't do that, then what am I doing here, right? So I think that's part of it.
Gotcha. And last question here. You said about the stop spinning 400 times, telling the kids stop spinning 400 times. Have you seen attention span decrease and just shorten over time? Like you said, you've been doing this instructor thing for like almost a decade now. Have you seen that like actually have a real world impact in terms of kids and attention
Oh
span?
man, 100%. Like, I see a lot of
Like
our
it's gotten
kids.
worse?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the thing of, you're having a hard time, so here's an iPad, here's a movie, right? Entertain yourself. Like, here's electronics, and I think that's the world that we live in. I was having a conversation with a dad on Friday, funny enough. Oh no, on Thursday rather. Like, when I was a kid, I used to go out and play in the woods until the sun went down, and my mom used to say, as long as you're inside before it gets pitch black, right, and the cul-de-sac light comes on, I'm good with that. In the world that we live in now, when my wife and I have kids, my child will not be walking anywhere alone at any time of the day, right? And not just because of the world we live in, but everyone's distracted, and no one's doing the right thing half the time, which is why our mission statement inside the school is what it is, right? So like, one of the things that I force every single kid to do is, when they speak to me, they have to look me in the eyes, right? Even my 4-year-olds, right? So even when my 4-year-olds speak to me and they're staring at the floor or whatever, I always say, eyes, like, eyes are up, look at me, right? I tell my kids when they walk across the street with their mom and dad to put their iPads away, because I'll see sometimes that when they walk out to the car, mom will kind of be guiding them, but not forcing them to look up. So their habit is still eyes down while they cross the street, right?
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, so it's these things of like, electronics in the world that we live in, right? So it's definitely something that, staying focused, getting my kids to work on the same 5 moves for 30 minutes straight can be really boring, and it can feel really horrible at a kid's age, right? But it's something that's important. So like, they test every 2 months. I test every like 4 years. Right. So I do the same form. I do the same 84 moves for 4 years straight. I compete with the same material for 4 years straight. Right. Where they only have to do it for a couple weeks straight. Right. And they're ready. I want to learn something new. Right. Eventually that stops in life. Right. And you have to be comfortable getting good with where you're at while you're waiting to grow. And I think attention span has a big part of that. So if you can't focus on, something for an extended period of time, having a job for 10 years straight, those types of things I think are going to happen less and less and less with the generation that comes up. So if I can create the atmosphere where these kids go out and understand that like dedication and discipline show good things and show good merit, I think that's a win.
I think that's a perfect place to end it. I think
Yeah,
that
man.
entire dude, I learned so much, and it just like it almost inspired me. I was like, maybe I should start like
Hey, man, I
being
got
an
an adult
instructor.
class for you, bro. Come on. I got an
I,
adult class for you.
I might just do it. Yeah. So we're gonna. Is it cool if we put the links to your website, like
Yeah, man.
DMs?
100%.
Yeah. Okay. So
Please
we'll
do.
add all the
For sure.
links in the description. I really appreciate it. I know you probably
Yeah,
got to
man.
run. You're probably at like 1%. So thank you so much. And yeah, see ya.
Yeah. Yeah, brother. I appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you
Alrighty.
soon.